My contractor sabotaged my $400,000 renovation to extort an extra $250,000. But he didn't know I had hidden cameras. The text message came at 11 p.m. on a Thursday. Mr. Bradford, we have a major problem. The foundation work failed. Water damage throughout the basement. This is going to cost an extra $250,000 a fix. We need payment within 48 hours, or we're walking off the job. I stare at my phone in my temporary rental apartment. My house, the home I'd lived in for 30 years, had been under renovation for 4 months. I'd hired Russo Construction to do a complete remodel. New foundation, updated electrical, modern kitchen, master suite edition. Contract price, $400,000. I'd already paid $320,000. Now Tony Russo was demanding another $250,000 for emergency repairs. Something felt wrong. I'd been a construction engineer for 40 years. I'd managed projects worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I knew how buildings worked. I knew how contractors worked. And I knew when someone was lying. 2 weeks later, I would stand in a courtroom and show video evidence that would send Tony Russo to prison. But in that moment, reading his text message, I could only think one thing. Tony had made a catastrophic mistake. He'd forgotten what I did for a living. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a story about standing up for what's right. Part 1. The Project. My name was William Bradford. I was 65 years old, and I just retired after 40 years as a structural engineer and construction project manager. I'd worked on everything: high-rises, hospitals, bridges, commercial developments. I'd managed teams of hundreds, budgets in the tens of millions, complex engineering challenges. After I retired in 2024, my wife and I decided to renovate our house in Pasadena. We bought it in 1994. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 2,400 square feet. Wonderful neighborhood. But the house was aging. Foundation cracks. Outdated electrical, small bathrooms, old kitchen. We wanted to stay in the house for the next 20 years. So we decided to do it right. Complete renovation. I spent 3 months planning, drew up detailed specifications, hired an architect to design the master suite edition, got structural calculations for the foundation work. Then I sought bids from contractors. Tony Russo came highly recommended. Russo Construction had good online reviews. Tony was licensed, bonded, insured. He'd been in business for 15 years. We met at my house in August 2024. Tony was 42, confident, personable. He reviewed my plans carefully. Mr. Bradford, this is a solid scope of work. Professional specs. I can tell you no construction. I'm a retired engineer. I've managed construction projects for 40 years. Then you know this is a complex job. Foundation work is tricky, but we can do it right. I'm estimating $400,000, 8-month timeline. When can you start? October 1st. I'll need 20% down to secure the schedule. I reviewed his contract carefully. Standard AIA form. Payment schedule. 20% down, then progress payments at specific milestones. Final 10% upon completion. I signed the contract. Paid $80,000 down. Tony started work on October 1st, 2024. For the first 2 months, everything seemed fine. His crew was professional. The demolition went smoothly. Foundation excavations started on schedule. And I moved into a rental apartment while the work was done. We visited the house weekly to check progress. By December, I'd paid $240,000, 60% of the contract. The foundation was poured. Framing was underway. Electrical roughing was starting. Then things started to slow down. Tony's crew showed up less frequently. Days went by with no workers on site. Tony made excuses. Permit delays. Supply chain issues. Crew got sick. By January 2025, the project was 6 weeks behind schedule. I'd paid $320,000, 80% of the contract. Then I got Tony's text message. Major problem. Foundation work failed. Water damage. Need $250,000 to fix. Part 2, the inspection. I drove to the house at 7 a.m. the next morning. Tony met me at the front door. He looked serious, concerned. Mr. Bradford, I'm sorry to give you bad news, but we have a significant structural issue. He led me down to the basement. Water was pooled on the concrete floor. The walls were damp. Several foundation cracks were visible. See these cracks? The foundation work failed. The soil underneath wasn't properly compacted. The concrete settled unevenly. Now we have water infiltration. The entire foundation needs to be reinforced and waterproofed. I knelt down and examined the cracks. They were substantial, quarter-inch width, running vertically up the wall. Tony, when did these cracks appear? We noticed them 2 days ago. They've gotten worse since then. Did you do a soil compaction test before pouring the foundation? Of course. It passed. Show me the test results. Tony hesitated. They're at my office. I'll get them to you. I stood up and looked around the basement. Something didn't add up. I'd reviewed the foundation design myself. The soil analysis had shown stable conditions. The engineer's calculations were conservative. There was no reason for settlement cracks to severe this quickly. Tony, I want to bring in an independent structural engineer to assess this. Mr. Bradford, we don't have time for that. The water is getting worse. We need to start repairs immediately or the damage will spread to the first floor. I'm not authorizing $250,000 without an independent assessment. Tony's face hardened. Then you're making a mistake. If this foundation fails completely, you're looking at a $500,000 repair, maybe more. And my contract says I'm not liable for unforeseen site conditions. I'll have an engineer here by tomorrow. I left the house and called my colleague, Dr. Raymond Chun. He'd been a structural engineering professor at USC for 30 years. We'd worked together on dozens of projects. Ray, I need your help. I think my contractor is trying to scam me. Part 3, the evidence. Dr. Chin came to my house the next morning with a junior engineer and testing equipment. They spent 4 hours in the basement, measuring cracks, taking core samples, testing concrete strength, checking drainage. When they finished, Dr. Chin pulled me aside. William, something is very wrong here. What did you find? These cracks aren't from foundation settlement. They're from mechanical force. Someone deliberately damaged this foundation. I felt my stomach drop. What? Look at the crack patterns. They're too uniform, too linear. Settlement cracks are irregular. They follow the weakest points in the concrete. These cracks are straight, evenly spaced at regular intervals. He showed me photos on his tablet. See these tool marks inside the cracks? Someone used a concrete saw to cut partway through the foundation, then used a sledgehammer to crack it the rest of the way. This is deliberate sabotage. Are you certain? Absolutely. And there's more. The water in your basement isn't from groundwater infiltration. It's from a hose. A hose? We found a garden hose hidden behind the water heater. It was running for hours, flooding the basement to make it look like a water intrusion problem. I stared at the photos. Someone had deliberately damaged my foundation and flooded my basement. Tony Russo. Ray, can you document all of this in a report? Photos, analysis, conclusions? I'll have it to you by tomorrow. One more thing. Can you estimate how much it would actually cost to repair the real damage, not the fake damage Tony is claiming? Dr. Chin checked his notes. The actual damage is superficial. Fill the saw cuts with epoxy, resurface the concrete. Maybe $8,000 in materials and labor. This isn't a $250,000 problem. It's not even a $25,000 problem. I thanked Dr. Chun and drove back to my rental apartment. Tony had sabotaged my house, created fake damage, then tried to extort $250,000. But I needed proof that Tony had done it, not just proof that the damage was fake. I needed video evidence. Part 4, the cameras. When I'd moved out of my house in October, I'd installed security cameras. Not obvious ones, small, wireless cameras hidden throughout the house. Living room, kitchen, garage, basement. I'd been in construction for 40 years. I'd seen contractor theft, vandalism, unauthorized work. I always protected my projects. I logged into the camera system on my laptop, scrolled back through the footage from the past week. January 14th, 2025, 6:47 p.m. The basement camera showed Tony Russo entering the frame. Alone. No crew. He carried a concrete saw and a sledgehammer. For the next 40 minutes, the video showed Tony 1. Using the concrete saw to cut shallow lines into the foundation walls. 2. Using the sledgehammer to strike the cuts, creating cracks. 3. Connecting a garden hose to the utility sink. 4. Running the hose behind the water heater. 5. Turning on the water and letting it flood the basement floor. 6. Taking photos of the damage with his phone. All captured on video. Clear footage. Tony's face clearly visible. Time stamped. Then, 2 days later, January 16th at 9:14 a.m., another video. Tony in the basement with a man I didn't recognize. They were standing in the flooded basement, looking at the cracks. The audio was clear. Tony, this should be enough to get another $250,000 out of him. Other man, what if he brings an engineer? Tony, he won't. He's already paid $320,000. He's pot committed. He'll pay the extra money to get the job finished. Other man, and if he refuses? Tony, then we walk. He's stuck with a half-finished house, fake foundation damage, and no contractor willing to take over. He'll come back begging. Other man, what about the footage from the cameras? Tony laughed. What cameras? Old guy doesn't have cameras. Even if he does, we'll say the damage was already there. Our word against his. I watched the video 3 times. Tony had admitted everything. Sabotage, extortion, fraud, all on camera. Part 5, the confrontation. I called my attorney, Michael Lawson. He specialized in construction law. Michael, I need to file a lawsuit. Fraud, breach of contract, extortion. And I need to do it today. I explained the situation and sent him Dr. Chen's report and the security camera footage. Michael called me back an hour later. William, this is one of the clearest cases of contractor fraud I've ever seen. The video evidence is devastating. We can file a civil suit and also refer this to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. How long will a lawsuit take? Could be a year, maybe longer. But with this evidence, we can get an immediate restraining order and freeze Tony's ability to work on other projects. Do it. Michael filed a lawsuit that afternoon. Bradford versus Russo Construction, civil case number 25, CV 9956. Claims: 1. Fraud, fake foundation damage. 2. Extortion, demanding $250,000. 3. Breach of contract, sabotaging the project. 4. Trespass and vandalism, damaging property. Relief sought. Return of all progress payments, $320,000. Punitive damages. Cost to complete the project with a new contractor. Attorney's fees. Michael also filed an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order, TRO, asking the court to prohibit Tony from contacting me, prohibit Tony from entering my property, freeze Tony's business assets, refer the matter to the district attorney for criminal charges. The hearing was scheduled for 2 days later. Part 6, the hearing. The TRO hearing was held in Los Angeles Superior Court. Judge Sandra Martinez presiding. Tony showed up with his lawyer, Gary Stevens. Cheap suit, nervous demeanor. Judge Martinez called the case. This is Bradford versus Russo Construction. Mr. Bradford seeks a restraining order and asset freeze based on allegations of fraud and extortion. Mr. Lawson, present your case. Michael stood and submitted Dr. Chen's engineering report. Your Honor, the defendant deliberately sabotaged Mr. Bradford's home renovation. He used a concrete saw and sledgehammer to create fake foundation cracks, then flooded the basement with a garden hose to simulate water damage. He then demanded $250,000 to repair damage he himself had created. He played the security camera footage on the courtroom screen. The video showed everything. Tony sawing the foundation, hammering the cracks, flooding the basement, discussing the extortion scheme with his associate. The courtroom was silent. Judge Martinez watched the entire video. When it finished, she turned to Tony. "Mr. Russo, is that you in the video?" Tony's lawyer whispered to him urgently. Tony's voice was barely audible. "Yes, Your Honor. Did you deliberately damage Mr. Bradford's foundation?" "Your Honor, there were structural issues. We were just documenting." "Mr. Russo, the video shows you cutting the foundation with a saw. That's not documentation. That's vandalism." She turned to Michael. "Mr. Lawson, I'm granting the TRO. Mr. Russo is prohibited from contacting Mr. Bradford or entering the property. I'm also freezing Russo Construction's bank accounts pending resolution of this case." She looked at Tony. "Mr. Russo, I'm referring this matter to the Los Angeles District Attorney for criminal prosecution. You may face charges of fraud, extortion, and vandalism." Gary Stevens stood. "Your Honor, my client is willing to settle. We can refund Mr. Bradford's payments." "Too late for that, Mr. Stevens. The criminal referral is going forward. This court takes contractor fraud very seriously." Judge Martinez set a trial date for 60 days out and banged the gavel. Part 7, the trial. The district attorney charged Tony Russo with 1. Grand theft, taking $320,000 under false pretenses. 2. Extortion, demanding $250,000. 3. Vandalism, damaging foundation. 4. Fraud, fake damage claims. For felonies, maximum sentence, 12 years. The criminal trial lasted 2 weeks. The prosecution presented Dr. Chen's engineering report proving sabotage, security camera footage showing Tony creating fake damage, text messages demanding $250,000, audio recordings, Tony admitting the scheme. Tony's lawyer tried to argue that the foundation damage was pre-existing and that Tony was just trying to help by identifying it. The video footage destroyed that defense. The jury saw Tony sawing the concrete, hammering the cracks, flooding the basement, and laughing about extorting me. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes. Guilty on all counts. Tony Russo was sentenced to 6 years in state prison and ordered to pay full restitution. $320,000 refund of progress payments, plus $180,000 cost to hire a new contractor to complete the work, plus $95,000 attorney's fees and damages. Total, $595,000. The judge also revoked Tony's contractor's license permanently. Part 8, the aftermath. After Tony was convicted, I hired a new contractor, Martinez Sons Construction. They reviewed the project, repaired Tony's sabotage cost, $12,000, just as Dr. Chen had estimated, and completed the renovation. The project finished in August 2025, 10 months after it started, and 4 months later than originally planned. Total cost, $400,000 original contract, plus $12,000 sabotage repairs, plus $95,000 legal fees, equals $507,000. Tony's restitution payments covered $320,000 of that. The rest came from my savings. And I moved back into the house in September. It was beautiful. Everything we'd wanted. New foundation, modern kitchen, master suite, updated electrical. Worth the fight. 6 months after the trial, I received a letter from Tony, sent from state prison in Chino. "Mr. Bradford, I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness. I know what I did was wrong. I got greedy. I've been doing this for years, sabotaging projects, demanding extra money, threatening to walk away. Most homeowners just paid. They were scared, desperate, didn't know enough about construction to fight back. I thought you'd be the same. Another retiree who didn't understand structural engineering, who'd panic at the sight of foundation cracks and water damage. I didn't know you'd spent 40 years as a construction engineer, that you'd installed security cameras, that you'd bring in an expert to analyze the damage. By the time I realized my mistake, it was too late. I destroyed my business, my reputation, my freedom. all for $250,000 I never got. I think about all the homeowners I scammed over the years, all the families I extorted, all the trust one betrayed. I can't undo it. I can only serve my sentence and hope that someday I can make amends. I'm sorry, Tony Russo. I read the letter once. Then I filed it away. And I spent that winter enjoying our renovated house, hosting family dinners, celebrating the holidays, living in the home we dreamed about. The renovation had cost me more than I'd planned, an extra $107,000 in repairs and legal fees. But I'd fought back. I'd exposed Tony's fraud. I protected other homeowners from being victimized. And I'd proven that experience and preparation matter. Tony had thought he could scam a retiree who didn't understand construction. He'd forgotten that I'd spent 40 years building things, managing contractors, solving engineering problems. He'd forgotten that I knew how to spot fake damage, how to hire experts, how to gather evidence. And he'd never imagined I'd installed security cameras. That was his fatal mistake. 40 years in construction taught me one lesson: trust but verify. Tony had asked for my trust. I'd given it, but I'd also verified. The cameras captured everything. And in the end, that made all the difference.